home sweet home. Perhaps we can make our home, Winsted, great again. Well, a lot seems to be happening now. Things are picking up speed. There's plenty of things going on in town. The last couple of Selectmen Finance Board meetings have been difficult for me to reproduce for you because two of the DVDs were ruined one way or another. The first time, I think Tim forgot to put the plug in. That was 3 weeks ago. And the last one, I guess they had a bad disc or DVD. When I went down to the town hall to get copies of the audio parts of these meetings, there were none. I guess they don't keep the audio anymore and they're not required to do it by charter, I guess. I haven't looked into all the facts on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So from now on, I'm going to have to record them myself one way or another as a backup, just in case they lose more DVDs. I have noticed over the years that when you're in election year, they tend to not to want to telecast a lot of information for one reason or another. It was an interesting select meeting last time. There was a very interesting budget approach by the town manager. He wants to stick to the growth in the grand list, which was about 2.7% for one reason or another. A lot of it was because people had gotten exemptions from taxes, and those exemptions were up. I think that was quite a bit of it. And he's also going to try to hold the school to the minimum budget requirement. Now, for people I've talked to over the last few weeks, it looks like we may be able to look at the minimum budget requirement now and see if we are in a position to reduce it. Although I'm not an expert on this, and I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know all the state rules, I'm told that as the number of students goes down, we might be able to reduce the minimum budget requirement. The other interesting thing about the schools is, I was told, again, it's not official yet, but we're losing about $350,000 because we were getting that from the state for the last few years to make up for our low test scores. Well, our test scores have now improved a bit from K through 12. Some think it's because we have the Chinese students and other students from abroad that might help to pull up the grades, bolster them. If so, that's good. But we won't be getting that $350,000 once it becomes official by the state. And I'm told that that might be going to Torrington if it goes through the way it's being planned now. Another interesting thing that's happening is that the Super Saver has been trying for a year or so, maybe more, maybe a little less, to find a buyer for their properties and their business. John Dwan has been running that business for about 36 years. I think he's about 62 years old, maybe give or take a year or two. And he wants to retire and do other things. I went down and talked to him for quite a while one day last week. He did say he advertised it quite a bit and that he talked to the town about perhaps doing something together with the building, but he really wants to retire, the building and the business. So that's going to P&Z and the local clinic that's in the area there, right in back of his store on Elm Street, wants to purchase the building and move into it if they can get by the P&Z commission with their desires. So by the time you see this, there'll have already been one meeting with P&Z, and there'll probably be another one or two. I always record these a little bit early in the week so that I can get them up on time for Thursday and Friday night. So this week's information may or may not be added to this program. The other thing we found out this week is that there is a proposal for Lambert K. Somebody wants to do things there. They need a P&Z regulation change, according to the newspapers I read, to be able to do what they want to do, which is sort of commercial, and it'll have art stores in there and some coffee shops and other things like that. So that's something that may help us over the years. Now, I did read in the paper where it will probably take them 3 years to get it up and running, should they get their approvals and should the purchase go through. The town owns it, as you know. They bought it for $1 many, many years ago. They cleaned it up with a grant from the state. So it's possible that sooner or later, over the next 3 years, 2-3 years, maybe 4, things do tend to drag out. If they buy the building, it looks like they want to keep the building and rehab it, and they have experience doing that in other places, and maybe even have won an award or two, according to the newspapers. Then that might go on to the tax rolls. If Super Saver is sold to the clinic, then it'll come off the tax rolls because the clinic is a 501(c) and doesn't pay any taxes. And I heard a rumor, I haven't seen it in the paper or anything, but I heard a rumor that they're getting a $1 million grant or so from the federal government to be able to afford this, do this transaction, or one similar to it. I suppose if they wanted to, they could move somewhere else, buy some other building, and go there. Now, there are people pushing back on all this. They'd like to see the Super Saver stay. None of them would want to buy it, however, and run it as a store. The people leading the push are the extremists from the lake and the town that want to make this into Litchfield, Goshen, Norfolk, those kind of things. It'll probably never be Great Barrington, but that name keeps coming up all the time. But from what I hear, there's a lot of problems out around Great Barrington too, foreclosures and all that kind of thing. And Great Barrington does have some benefits that we probably could never get, as I mentioned on previous program. Now the schools, that's very interesting. We still have that huge problem with the expense of the schools, and we're going to try to hold them, the town manager is going to try to hold them to the minimum budget requirement and give them a little money on the side for non-educational expenses. We won't know exactly what happens until the public hearings are held, and the referendum is held, one or more referendums on the budget. And the thing I like about it is that Bob Geiger is trying to stick within the growth of the grand list and not raise taxes, and to hold the schools to the minimum budget requirement with a little money on the side, and begin to repair the roads from year to year to year to year, so far without a bond issue. Now, that doesn't mean it'll be the same way in the future. Depends on a lot of things. But we might even change the town manager. He might leave for one reason or another, and we get another town manager with a whole different philosophy. And that's why it's important, it's very important, to get in 5 good, business experienced, and decisive selectmen finance board members in the next election in November, and on the Board of Education, because they've always been weak financially. It's terrible. The state had to take them over. They were so bad. We got to get in some good people here. Now, the Democrats might be able to come up with 1 or 2 with business experience that are strong and can do things regardless of the Democratic town committee, who's very liberal and has a certain outlook on life. It's been packed by the Highland Lake Watershed Association, like many things in our town. So we need to get these people into those areas to help support Bob Geiger, the new town manager. Now, is he perfect? No. Is he doing everything the way I would do it? No. Is he doing it everything the way you would do it? No. He does have government to work with, just like Donald Trump just found out recently. He can't even get his own party to vote for the things he'd like to see done. So that makes it very, very, very difficult for him. And it's the same thing with Bob Geiger. He has to have the support. He has to have the support and leadership of the finance board. He's already got a good accounting department now. He's got get a little better knowledge of the schools, which I'm sure he's going to try to do. But there's a lot of work here that has to be done. And it's up to you, the voters in the town, and everybody you know, to help select some good candidates for this next election. I personally think that the leadership should be not the Republicans and not the Democrats, but unaffiliated voters and residents that want to see the grand list grow. So if I had to do a platform for them, my platform would be grow the grand list, spend only as you increase the grand list, and try to sort out the 65% school cost problem. That's a pretty short platform to run on. All the rest is small compared to that. And with the leadership of people like Bob Geiger or others of his capability, and we don't seem to be able to get many of those, we can get things done. So part of the reason I'm on here with these bi-weekly programs is because I'd like to see us strengthen our finance board, our board of selectmen, and our board of education while Bob's still here. You don't know what the next town manager is going to be like. You don't want somebody who's a lackey and just follows the liberal Democrats. The Republicans are kind of split in our town nowadays, just like they are at the federal level, state level. They're split in their philosophies. So it's hard for them to work together to defeat the Democrats, who are very liberal, but united. Now, there are a lot of Democrats in town that aren't liberal. They're conservatives. They have run businesses, and they want to see the grand list grow. Now, everybody will tell you they want to see the grand list grow. Everybody will tell you that. Some of them mean it, and some of them don't. With some of them, it's just a fake. Like in basketball, it's a fake. And then they go the other way. It's part of the game. So they'll tell you anything. They'll tell you anything before the election, and then they'll do whatever they want to do after the election. Now, Donald Trump told us a lot of things before the election, and he's finding it's more difficult to do. Now, he has done a lot of things, but a few of the big things he's trying to do are stonewalled and will be. But then again, as I always say, it takes 10 to 20 years, 15 to 20 years to get anything done in government, whether that's at the federal level or state level or town of Winchester, city of Winsted level. So we got a long way to go. And I want to say, and I want to re-emphasize this, I have to keep repeating it. That's part of educating. You always repeat. To learn a song on my Cajun accordion, I have to repeat it 1,000 times, maybe 2,000, get all the muscles working properly and all the timing right, and all the little embellishments correct, and the Cajun beat, and all that kind of thing. That takes time, practice, experience. Practice, 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 practice. Now, once they get into office, the other part of their platform is to get good, growth-orientated people onto planning and zoning, which has people have terms of 5 years, so it takes a long time to straighten that out. Probably take 20 years to straighten that out. Same for the ZBA, and keep trying to get better people on the Board of Education. A lot of work has to happen there. So once they get elected, that's what they have to do. But they can only do it very slowly over a long period of time because of the rules of the game. And that's the way governments are designed. They're designed to go very, very, very slowly. Get things done a little at a time for a long period of time. Now, I also talked to George Knockline, the limnologist, a couple weeks ago after he gave his presentation to the selectmen. I put it up on YouTube for all to see. And he says that he has been recommending to the town for many years that we need a complete study of the lake. It might cost something like $50,000, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. That was just a rough estimate, and it'll take some time. But as you know, I've told you many times, all lakes die over a long period of time. And there's a lot of things we're doing at the lake that will make it die quicker. And some of those things may be able to be reduced, and some may not. So the study is necessary. It's been necessary for many years. He's going to recommend it, I think, in his next report, which I still haven't seen yet, to the town, whatever committee or commission he's working with. And he says he has recommended it in the past, but it never came to fruition. My view is you should charge everybody around the lake $58 a family. Come up with enough money if there's about 600 families here year-round over the year, and get the study done. It's very, very important. Now, the roads are another story. One of the big problems with the roads is the report came in, and it makes sense. They have to do the good roads first, because then they won't get worse. Now, they will do a few bad roads, as Bob said at the last meeting, where they're absolutely critical. But in general, the approach is to do the good roads first, and then get to the lousy roads, the ones that need the most work, last. I'm sure there'll be some exceptions from time to time where it's absolutely necessary. But that doesn't help. That's going to take a long time to get those roads done too, with or without a bond issue. We have some other good news. We have good fund balance now. That's a help. We still have a lawsuit with Capital Products. They've been 7 years now or so. We're supposed to be paying us back our taxes and stuff. I don't know all the details there because it's kept pretty quiet. Closed meetings for that kind of negotiation, so I don't know exactly what all the details are, but all I know is we still got the lawsuit going on. We must be paying the lawyer, too, to defend us there. There is some progress being made on the furniture building, but it's slow. I was told that there's about 4 places up there that are probably rented now. Could be 1 or 2 more, maybe a little more. I don't know. I was told that a few weeks back. And that the thing is coming along. But it is coming along very, very slowly. There's plenty of other things happening now. The market's turned around in the last year. Other people are putting their houses up. There's some more houses up on the lake for close to $1 million that have come out in the last 6 months or so. May or may not help the situation. Depends on what's happening at the national level and where the market can keep its pace. If it crashes again, then we're all going to be back in the soup for another 10 years. It's going to be hard for Donald. We all know that. It is hard running a government like a business. Very difficult. And he's going to have his share of problems, but I'd still rather see him in there than somebody that doesn't know anything about running a business. We don't need that. Even people that run a business have a difficult time. Some of our presidents have been very good businessmen, but didn't do too well. We are headed towards socialism. We're creeping there. There's all kinds of things leading us in that direction. I've lived in socialism for 15 years, on and off, while I travel the world from London. Been all behind the Iron Curtain, as I tell you many times. So I know where we're headed. I know where we're headed, and I'm not so sure that even Donald's going to be able to stop that. He might slow it down, retard it for a while. We don't know. So we'll have to take it year by year, 10 years by 10 years, until we get to the point where we're balanced, if that ever happens at all. We got some things coming into town, as the selectmen say. They try to make it look good because this is an election year. So they paint a lot of the small things with beautiful colors. They don't mention at all what the next 3 years of the grand list is going to be looking like, or the next 10 years or 5 years, or even 20 years. They haven't got a clue. Now, we are putting out, every time there's an audit, my son updates the spreadsheet and pipeline, and we do give it to everybody. It's public information. So we all have an idea what will happen. And the same will probably happen in the future as has happened in the past 12 years. Because it takes so long to resolve that. Well, it took us 4 or 5 years just to get around our financial problem, and we still haven't got our accreditation and all that stuff that we need. We probably can borrow some money in the future, but some people say it might be a year away, if we need any bond or anything like that for the infrastructure. The state's getting tougher and tougher for us. They're putting more and more budgetary restrictions on the towns and passing more responsibilities down to the towns, which is good in a way. I agree with that, because if the towns have to raise the money, they'll think harder about giving things away. They'll think harder, much harder, about spending money. That's all going to take time. So there's a lot happening now. You should keep your eye on the newspaper, because on this program, I'm not going to get down too much into the details that you will read every day in the newspapers. Now remember, some of the papers spin things. They like to make things look better than perhaps they are too. And they try to keep on the good side of the people in the town as much as they can, because they want to be able to interview them and get information to put in their newspapers. There'll be a lot of letters to the editors flowing in sooner or later. 1 or 2 have already surfaced. People are beginning to start their campaigns. The Taxpayers Association is on TV, and they'll be talking about this right up through the election. Jay Budahazy's back on again. On Tuesday night, he does things about the town, like senior center dances and things like that. And on Thursday night, right after my programs, he talks about Winsted issues like he's always done. Actually, when you listen to him, a lot of the issues that he's always talked about are still there. 15 years later, 10 years later, 5 years later, into a couple of his programs, and it's deja vu. He's bringing back to your attention a lot of the issues that he's been talking about for 15 years, maybe more. But you need a balance. You need to hear all sides of the story. First thing, whenever I hear anything, I go out and talk to the people, talk to John Dewan, talk to anybody I can to find out exactly what's happening. Now, some of it, as I said earlier, is confidential if it's in litigation. But remember, theoretically, the zoning boards and all are supposed to follow the rules, follow the law. So they have to be watched very carefully. And I advise anybody who's going to go before P&Z, ZBA, or any of those boards to have a lawyer and to have a good land use person to help keep the balance with the commissions. Because they're human beings. They're put in there for certain reasons. Most of them are in there because they don't want anything in their own backyard that they don't agree with. And you have the Highland Lake Watershed Association, which is extremely left, and they try to do their best to keep things off the lake and keep things out from being around in the Highland Lake District, or on the way up the hill, or on the way down the road to Torrington, or anywhere else like that. But Bob Geiger knows, he's our town manager, he knows we need to grow the grand list, and he knows how hard it is to do it, and he knows what he has to do it. He also knows that we have to balance the spending between the town and the schools, and he knows we don't need 2 superintendents, that's obvious. He probably knows we don't need 2 of these, 3 of these, and 4 of those things. Now I even hear that the state is starting to look into these places that have 2 different school systems like we have. There's only 2 or 3 in the state. But they're concerned about it. Maybe they learned that from being involved with us for the last 2 years, dealing with Gilbert, dealing with K through 6, and dealing with our town and our charter, the state statutes. So there's a lot going on now. A lot of foreclosures still. Some new businesses coming into town, some businesses leaving town. As I said, John Dewan did advertise, tried over the last year or so to find somebody to buy his store. And most of the people that want to keep it and that are leading the effort not to turn it over to P&Z for use as a clinic that doesn't pay taxes, they don't want to buy it themselves. I always say, hey, if you feel that strongly about it, why don't you buy it from John Dewan? Why don't the Naders buy it from John Dewan? Why doesn't the Island Lake Watershed Association and people on it buy it from John Dewan? Why don't other people do that? Now, when I talk to John, and I'm just paraphrasing what he said, is that he thinks that should his store go out of business because the clinic gets permission to use it and buy it, then other people will pop up and they will have it. If there's a need, there will be a store. That's the capitalistic way of doing things. Somebody will come in and put a meat market in if that's necessary. And they think they can make some money doing it. And it'll probably be family run, so they don't have to pay anybody and don't have to put anybody on all the Obamacares of the world and things like that. Won't family do it like the Nader family did years ago. And new families that come in from around the world are doing now in certain places. But nobody seems to want to do that. They want you to spend your money to buy out John Dewan and keep Super Saver open. They want you to put a hotel into town, not them. They want you to put a hotel into town so that people can come to the Torp Museum and the Wall of America, which I don't think would ever fill a hotel. People have looked at our town in the past. They've decided that perhaps this isn't the town for them to put their hotel in. Now, we do have bed and breakfasts. There is Airbnb. There are rentals. There are things like that. But people who are going to put a hotel in or buy Super Saver, they're going to want to make sure it's a good business. I think John employs about 30, maybe a little few more people down there. And I know that he's met his payroll for 33 years without missing one. It's a long time. There's a lot of people in our town that speak up a lot. They never had to meet a payroll. They don't know anything about meeting a payroll and how tough it is to do so. It's a big, 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 big responsibility because people need to be paid and they want to be paid on time. They don't want to have to wait a week or 2 or whatever to get paid. I used to tell people, and I still do, and it'll be in my book, A Life in the Fast Lane. When I was running a company in San Diego, California for 7 years, I ran Grundy Environmental Systems that we bought from Plessy Environmental Systems. That's the one that did all the water quality equipment for limnologists and oceanographers around the world, including Jacques Cousteau, as I always say. I had to meet the payroll every Friday. And the people who worked in my factory, their spouse, man or woman, would come into the parking lot every Friday at 8 a.m. And they would expect to be paid. They wanted to get the check from their spouse when it was handed out at 12 noon on a Friday, every Friday. And at times, I had to put the salesman on an airplane and say, go to Washington, D.C. with flowers and candy and come back with a check that they owe us for our services so we can meet the payroll on Friday. And we never missed a payroll either. We also had a bank credit line that we could tap if we had to. And we didn't like doing that because then you had to pay interest. So anyway, a lot of people have never, ever had that responsibility. If they're teachers, which some of them are ex-teachers that are leading these efforts, they have protected by the strongest union in the country, and they're given tenure, so they can't be fired unless they do something really crazy. I keep mentioning this because it's very important. I've never had a job where I couldn't be fired if I didn't do a good job. Towards the end of my career, the last 25 years or so, I always had contracts because I was doing very, very difficult work, and a lot of my own business partners were trying to get me out because they didn't want all their problems exposed to the CEO and the board of directors. So I know what it's like. And I would tell them, I'm going in to do what you asked me to do and clean up this mess. If you want to let me go at any time, just pay me off and I'll go. But I had to stay and do the job for the length of the contract unless the company was sold or for one reason or another the contract ended. So anyway, when you see these people around town, tell them, hey, why don't you buy Super Saver? Why don't you build a hotel in town for people to stay in when they come to the Tort Museum or the Wall of America or to any of the other 501(c)(3)s in our town? And the number of 501(c)(3)s is growing everywhere in the Rust Belt anyway. I had one person from another town tell me that when they come in to town, they say, here's the paperwork from the state, from the feds, from wherever, for a 501(c), which won't pay any taxes, be tax-free. We want one of those. And more of those are beginning to be asked for. A lot of them are being approved. Capital Products, I believe, is a 501(c). The Nader Tort Museum, I believe, is a 501(c), or both of them are something very similar where they don't have to pay any taxes to the town, even though they use the roads, even they use all the other facilities in the town, even though all their visitors use the roads and all the other facilities in the town, they still don't have to pay any taxes. Now some of the towns are now looking into that, seeing what they can do to get around that problem, but we're not one of those yet. So anyway, all this has to be looked at very carefully, and we have to see how we can balance things. And that's why I always recommend, and now it's not too late to start or too early to begin, we've got to find some people to come out of the woodwork that are young enough and have the time and don't have any commitments to the town for business interests, although we have had businessmen in the past that promoted the growth, and they were always lampooned as people who just wanted the growth of the town so they could get more business for their business. My view is kind of simple. If they get more business for their business, good. They're also going to get more business for everybody else, and they're going to pay taxes. They're going to help everybody. And I still feel that way. I think it's very important for a lot of reasons to grow this grand list. It's so important that I'm spending my time on this instead of doing other things I'd rather do. Finishing my books, learning more musical songs, helping others learn, helping others do things in the area, all kinds of things like that. There's plenty to do. I moved this into my house so I could spend less time on it, and I could work in the middle of the night on it if I wanted to. I could do other things simultaneously, but it may not do any good. It may not do any good at all, because it's very hard to do good things in politics or in any of our towns, cities, local, federal government. Harder in other countries. It isn't as bad here as it is in other countries. You couldn't get much venture capital in England or in France or those kind of places. All the venture money seems to come to America. And there are places in America that are growing their grand list. There's about 3 states out of our 50 states They get most of the venture money. One of them's California, of course. That comes in from all over the world because this is still the best place, people think, to invest capital, especially in the growth type businesses that are being set up here. And a lot of these growth type businesses are helping to speed up the closure of other businesses. Banks don't want to have banks anymore. They don't want to hire people. They want everything done on the internet. Stores are getting killed by the internet purchasing that's going on around the world. You see that all the time. Now I just saw the other day where Sears Roebuck's closing down over time. Other people are closing stores left and right. Churches are closing down. There aren't as many kids anymore. And not as many people are as church oriented as they were when I was young. Some churches are doing well. A lot of them are in real trouble. 2 or 3 in Torrington are closing down. 1 synagogue as well. So things are getting tougher and tighter, tougher and tighter. So we need to figure out what we need to do to balance our spending with our revenue. And we need to be able to predict it over a few years so that we can plan wisely and won't get in the pickle. Now, we could have another crash here. That could happen if things keep going the way they're going, even at the national level. We're going to probably have a big problem with Obamacare. They say in 3 to 4 years it might fall flat on its face if something isn't done in the meantime. Now, with the art of the deal, I'm sure Donald's going to try to find some way to compromise with everybody and get it done before it crashes. But you can't guarantee that. You have to plan for both cases. You have to plan for it being a success, and you have to plan for it not being a success. You got to have a backup plan. It's called management by objectives and management by exception. Even though you think it's going to work, you got to make sure you try to make it work, and then you got to have a backup plan. And you got to have dates, critical dates that you have to meet in order to do something else if it's not going to succeed. So we're really moving along here. You got a long way to go. Do all you can to try to get some good people elected in November. Good people that put everybody's interest first, not just their own. You want people who want to help everybody, not just their own. You want balance. You want the whole community to succeed. A lot of the people that want the Super Saver to stay downtown don't even shop in town. They might buy a loaf of bread there. I think the sales in that place has gone down over the years, big time. Big time. If it were going up big time, people would buy it. People would buy it. But when they come in and they do the homework and they find out what it costs and what is the growth curve or lack of a growth curve for the revenue and expenses, and then they don't want to buy it. Or maybe they can't afford to buy it. Or maybe they can't get the backing to buy it. I asked one person, I said, why don't you buy it? Oh, will you give me the money? I can't buy it. I don't have any money. But also, John Dewan, this is an exception to most people. He's good at running a business. His father ran a business before him and retired at a fairly young age. Went on to another business. John intends to do things with his future, and he wants to do it while he's still capable and able to do it. He's had some health problems, nothing serious, but enough to slow him down a bit. So he wants to retire. And all the circumstances around the situation, which most people don't seem to want to pay any attention to, They say it's very nice to have it there. We want something to replace it. But they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that themselves. They want somebody else to do it. They want somebody else to take the risk, somebody else to take the gamble, somebody else to build a hotel, somebody else to buy Super Saver, but not them or their organization. Now, I think when they were contacting other people, they did try other organizations in the area, but they found nobody ready to spend the money and take the risk and spend the time and run that kind of a business. Now, maybe things will change. Maybe P&Z will, for good reason or bad reason, not approve the clinic for that building. And then John will have to face that, find another way to sell it to somebody else. But in my own view, I think it'll probably end up being a clinic, and we'll have to find another way to have a store, some stores downtown, whether they be one or more, who knows. We will lose money, $11,000 or so on the tax list, as Jay Woodhazy said the other night. He checked with the town hall, found that out. And you know, it all adds up. It all adds up. We don't want to lose any more. We want people to keep coming in. I have heard a rumor too, although it's not official yet, that maybe the college will be losing another $250,000 or so this year, next budget. Hope it's not true. It may not be true, but that's the kind of rumor I hear from people I talk to down in that area. Last year, they had to lay off 7 people at the college, and they had to close down some of the hours in their library because they didn't have a few of the people. Out of the 7, I think 2 or 3 of them worked nights and weekends in the library, so they cut the hours down, the number of days down. They're not open on Saturday anymore. They're not open late at night anymore. They close at 4:30. And they take all the normal schooly type holidays. If there's a few inches of snow, they close. They take off the holidays when the schools close, that kind of thing. And it's going to get tighter and tighter as the government in Connecticut keeps pushing a lot of the expense down to the towns and cutting back on their own employees at the state level. It's all going to be tougher. It's not going to be easier. It's going to be harder. Well, I got another 9 minutes or so I'll try to talk a little bit about what we want to try to do. I keep repeating this because we got to spread the word all over town early in the year now so people have a chance to do something positive in November. We really need to get those candidates that are unaffiliated to come out into the open if they can. We got to spread the word, think big, and get them to run for office in November. Now, I do have a few people who are contacting me say maybe they will run. They're qualified. Maybe they'll run in November as unaffiliated candidates for the Finance Board, Board of Education, and Board of Selectmen. This will really be great for Bob Geiger because the stronger he can get those boards, then they can start to change the commissions over a long period of time. They have long times. They're in there for 5 years, some of them. And if you already got all your commissions loaded with people who don't really want to grow the grand list except the way they want to grow the grand list, then you're going to be in real trouble for a long, 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 long time to come. He won't surface. Watch Woodhazy's show. He'll take you around town every Tuesday with his camera. And he'll show you the deterioration that's happening in our town. Now you'll get 1 or 2 of the liberal democratic select people, even some of them even who should know more about business than they exhibit, telling you everything's wonderful. We're going to get a new bakery in town. We're going to get a Henny Penny or whatever it's called come to town. But they don't say that those few things we're getting to town are just replacing the things that are leaving the town. The restaurant business is not going to save our town. The art business is not going to save our town. We have to think bigger than that. We have to spread the word. Now, whenever I ask anybody about these selectmen, this finance board, and the Board of Education, they always tell me, well, they know we need to grow the grand list. We know that, but they don't know how to do it. So I'm saying, well, let's get some people in there that know how to do it. That's not easy. That's not easy because most of the successful business people don't want to get involved for one of many, 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 many reasons. Either they don't want to lose business, like some people have done in the past in our town just over the last 10 years, or they don't want to embarrass their family members with all the stuff you see on TV at the federal level and state level, name calling, all the kind of things that happen. They'll tell you anything. They'll say anything to try to slow you down and try to neutralize you if you're good. They don't like that too well. They don't want people that know how to grow the grand list. They want people that will grow the grand list the way they want to see the grand list grown. They don't want anybody to do it any other way but the way they want to do it, which you've seen some lately with the closing of Super Saver and the acquisition of it, if they pass planning and zoning, by the health clinic. You see it. It's there. So we got to do something. It isn't going to sort itself out. It isn't going to sort itself out at all. We, the residents, owners of the town, owners of the city, we have to save this town. We have to grow the grand list. And that takes a long time. And as I've said in other programs, we've got to address the POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development, but we got to get the right people onto the boards to do that, and that's going to take 15 or 20 years. I hate to say that, but that's the way it is. I'm trying to wake you up. I'm trying to wake you up like a doctor would if you were smoking cigarettes or eating too much sugar or anything like that. So we got to get started now. We missed some opportunities when the Republicans were in before. We could have put some better people on there, but we didn't do it. We didn't do it because we had a couple of weak, in my view, selectmen, Republican selectmen on the board at the time. Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen. You know the debacle we have in the school system. The state had to take it over. State had to take it over. I don't know how that's going to fare. Can't keep going the way we're going there. 2 superintendents, 2 of this, 2 of that, 3 of this, 3 of that, if you include the town, as I said in other programs. I tend to repeat myself a lot because I got to spread the word. I got to think big. And a lot of people don't watch all the programs, so I'm trying to do it in such a way that I stay pretty high in this whole thing and get you to focus on the real problems we have, on the real problems. Now, we want to help everybody that wants to come to town. What we have to do is say, what would you like to do in our town? What would you like to do here? How can we bring you in, and how can we work together to make you successful? You can't say we want to be like Norfolk, Litchfield, Goshen, Barkhamsted, or New Hartford or anything. You can't say that. You got to do what we want you to do when you come to our town. We don't want that. What we've got to do is say, what do you want to do in our town? We did make a good move. A lot of people don't like it, but I think it's a great move by hiring a salesman for 3 months and getting a grant writer. I prefer the salespeople myself because we need to grow the grand list. And the more we rely on grants, the more it takes the heat off of getting the grand list to grow. The grand list is recurring money. Hopefully, if we treat the people well, the grant money is once. We spend it, and it doesn't recur. Once, whatever we get it for is up. Now, we do have things expiring this year, and that gives us a little more money to spend on the things we need to spend it on. We may be able to negotiate with the state and get the minimum budget requirement reduced. We may be able to do something like that. There are things that can be done. But we need the right people on these boards and commissions. We need those people. Won't happen in my lifetime. Won't happen in a lot of my viewers' lifetimes. More signs are going up. There's going to be a pretty good sales year around here. So a lot of people will be able to get out, but other people will come in. They'll come in at higher value on the houses, some on lower values if they buy houses that are thrown on the market by the banks and things. But we all need to work together. I don't know what I'm going to do for the next program because this is repetition. But I got some ideas. I'll try to get them put together for the new program in a couple weeks. If any emergency comes up, I'll let you know. Well, we're getting close to the end of the program now. I just want to remind you that I'm not getting down into all the nitty-gritty. You can see that in the newspapers. You'll get different points of view on it all. They print what they want to print. Sometimes they're cheerleaders for the town, sometimes not. To get a balanced view from any of the newspapers is difficult. They usually side with one group or another. It'd be nice if we had a newspaper where you could get both sides of the story. You can get an average of things. But we don't have that around here. So the details are pretty well covered by Jay Budahezi on his program, which is on Thursday night following my program. He's on at 8:30 to 9:30 Thursday night. Sometimes he'll show a repeat, sometimes he won't. David LaPointe, he's on at 7:30 on Wednesday night. He's a representative of the Taxpayers Association, so he's out looking at the details on how they spend the money, how they acquire the money, and all that kind of thing. And then when the audit's done, and it's presented at a Selectmen Finance Board meeting, I'll talk a bit about that. I'll send it out to my son to get the extrapolations done, and then I'll send that out to everybody, make it available to everybody. Heads of all the schools, heads of the town, Board of Selectmen, Finance Board, all those places, Board of Education, Gilbert, everybody knows. So with that, I'll say good night. Have yourself a good couple weeks. The show will be repeated for 2 weeks, and then I'll come up with another one. But basically, I'm just a cheerleader trying to get you to elect the right people in November. Thank you, Brian O'Haron. Good night. Home, sweet home. Perhaps we can make our home, Winsted, great again. Think big, spread the word, and let's make Winsted great again. In this very important election year, vote for experienced business candidates for all boards and commissions in November regardless of political party affiliation.